Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. That time of week where we're doing the NFL Power Rankings. Week number 5 kicks off tomorrow. It's going to be Atlanta, who gets another primetime game, and they're going to be up against division rival, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And guys, we're going to jump in. We're going to talk about all 32 teams, how they did in week 4 that just passed, who they're playing in week 5, and of course, ranking them 32 to number 1. This is the second one of the season. Baseball playoffs are in full swings for most people on this channel, most viewers, subscribers on this channel. Baseball's number 1, and the playoffs are hopping off big time. So let me know if you guys are watching that in the comments below. Otherwise, guys, we're focusing on NFL today, and we're going to jump into it right away. Number 32 on the board. I don't think there's much debate. I think most people that pick Cincinnati in the first week of the survivor pool are a little upset that the real New England seems to have come out to play. They lose 30-13 against San Francisco this past week, and they're up against Miami this week coming up. That game's going to be pretty interesting because Miami has not managed to score much points as of late, so that's going to match up pretty good with New England potentially, so that could be a fun game. But number 32, I think they're pretty much solidified there, and a lot of that has to do with number 31. The Carolina Panthers. Even though they lost this week 34-24 against their rival, Dalton's rival more than anything, Cincinnati Bengals, I think we've seen a little bit of a shift over the past 2 weeks of the Carolina Panthers, at least having a quarterback that can keep them somewhat in games has managed to score some points for them as well. Their defense at times has looked pretty good, but maybe this past week, giving up 34, not exactly what I expected to see, but I moved them up one spot. Potentially, if they keep playing the way they are, they're 1-3. They might pick out a couple of wins here and there. I do like who they're playing this week for a big chance to win and, again, move up the board. They're playing Chicago, and we're going to talk about them relatively shortly. Number 30. Just continuing to lose now, 0-4 on the season. I think they've lost 10 in a row now, dating back to last year. Jacksonville Jaguars just seemed to have the train falling off the tracks. They had a lead up in Houston. They end up losing 24-20. And I don't know what else can really go wrong for this team, but it's do or die, really, for them. And it might be do or die for Doug Peterson as well as the coach. Do or die potentially for Lawrence as the quarterback. They're up against Indy, a division rival, and it's really time to show. I don't think they're an 0-5 team, but at the same time, I don't find them having chances to win, and kind of has them sitting at number 30. Number 29, dropping a few spots. Just an ugly loss for them this past week against the Las Vegas Raiders. I think it was 20-10. They got into a pretty early lead against the Raiders, and you kind of expected them to be able to close the deal, but they just didn't. And Watson seems to be a complete disaster for this team ever since he joined. It's just has not worked out for them. The Browns have slowly but surely fallen down this power rankings board, and at this point, I would think they're the worst in the AFC North. Lot of games behind. They're going to end up having to play a couple more division games. They, of course, haven't really played any yet. But I don't see how they're going to compete in this division. All the other teams seem to be a little bit ahead of them. Number 28, moving them up a couple of spots. They got the chance to beat up on the Rams this week. The Rams, of course, not having the core of their offense really helping them out. They win 24-18 against that team. 2-2 on the year. Got to give them a little bit of credit. The wins have not come easy. They've been a little bit ugly, especially the week 1 win over Tennessee. But the Bears, they're 2-2. Still consider them a weak team. Still have a lot of work to do with Caleb Williams, of course, as their quarterback. But they got to be somewhat excited. They're picking up wins here and there. This week, big test. Carolina versus Chicago. Potentially the game of the week if you're looking in the bottom row of the bracket. Making an argument for a bottom row of the bracket game of the week. We got Miami at number 27. They're playing New England this week. They have to stop the bleeding. It has not been good whatsoever since Tua went down. Even slightly before the Tua injury, it has not looked good for Miami. Now having dropped 3 in a row and looking very badly on this Monday nighter, losing 31-12 against Tennessee. Kept it close at times. You thought they were going to get it, but Tyler Huntley just couldn't get it together. Some really bad penalties all around for the Dolphins. And a lot of questions to be asked. Tua still going to be out for a number of weeks. He is going to make a comeback this year, contrary to what a lot of people think. But right now, Dolphins are looking like, other than the Patriots, they're not going to win much in this division, and they are far away from a playoff caliber team that we saw last year. Number 26, moving up into the second bottom row. I do have those Titans. They did look all right, playing, of course, the Dolphins on the weekend. But overall, they have been in a position to win most games that they played, other than the one they played against Green Bay last week. They could have easily been a 3-1 team, which puts them a little bit in the hunt of their division. Lucky for them, ahead of the Jacksonville Jaguars. They are having an interesting time. They do get a bye week, a little chance to rest up here as well. I know Levis ended up having an injury. I don't remember if he ended up staying out of the game or not. But, yeah, Tennessee gets that little bit of a rest. Could be a good opportunity to work on those things that ended up costing them games already this year. Number 25, moving up a couple of spots. I'm not ready to buy in to the Raiders and the wins that they have picked up, because they haven't been clear-cut, solid wins. 20-10 over Cleveland, not exactly the win that we saw happening. The big win came, of course, when they beat Baltimore a couple weeks ago, but at the same time, it's going to be a little bit of inconsistency. And off the field, we're seeing Devontae Adams ask for a trade, which does not bode well for me in the longevity of this Raiders team. They do have a tough division. Whether or not they're going to be the 4th or 3rd is really what it's going to come down to at this point. I do have them as number 4. Next week, they do have the Denver Broncos, which is going to be a pretty pivotal game for them for really defining what this team is about. Are they a team that is going to maybe compete for a playoff spot? It's not out of the question early on in this season, 2-2 on the year. Losing the Carolina Panthers, a little bit weird. They lose there. They beat Baltimore. What kind of team are we dealing with? Only time's going to tell, all right? Number 24. I have the LA Rams, and arguably could put them lower based on how they've been doing as of late. I am holding a situation that Kupp's out, Nakua's out. Those are really holding back them in the past 2 games. They probably should have had better fates. I'm not going to think that, considering these other teams kind of have their full rosters, aside from the Dolphins, but I'm not sure Tua would have made much of a difference in some of these games. For the Dolphins, that's the big impact, whereas in the Rams game, I do think it would make a difference. They lose to Chicago 24-18. Not exactly what you want as a Rams fan, falling a little bit behind the 8 ball. I think they are 1-3 now on the year. It's going to be some good, tough games. They're going to be playing host to the Green Bay Packers, and if they're going to start turning around, they're going to have to start turning around quickly, and the Green Bay Packers are not the type of opponent you want to take lightly. Number 23, I have the New York Giants. They played the Thursday nighter this past week against Dallas, losing 20-15. It just seems like no matter what, they have the offense. It gets going, and they just can't punch it in when it comes to time to get into the red zone. And it really showed. I think they ended up getting 5 field goals for that 15 score. I'm pretty sure that's how it went. The week before, when they're playing Washington, they didn't have a kicker, which just the other side of things, but they couldn't punch it in. But I think when they start to get it together, we're going to see a Giants team that is much better than last year. Daniel Jones is going to be capable, with Neighbors just being absolutely epic so far. Giants have an interesting matchup. They're going far road. They have that extra day's rest to go to Seattle for next week. A team that I think they will match up pretty well with. When we're looking at the power rankings, they're quite big spread, but I would not sleep on that game. It's going to be an interesting one for sure. If it's a big spread, I'd definitely be hammering the Giants in that one. Number 22, I do have that Denver Broncos I talked about briefly with the Raiders, and they had a pretty awesome week. They picked up their 2nd win in a row, I think. 2nd win of the season at least. 10-9 against the New York Jets in what was a very sloppy game for both teams. No offense really got going. The weather was really bad, so it didn't hold a whole lot for them to move up. At the same time, I was pretty confident their defense has been pretty solid as of the past couple of games, so that did bolster them up a little bit. At the same time, we'll get to the Jets in a minute, but I didn't hold it too much against them just because weather games like this, very sloppy. You can't really find the true definition of some of these teams. Number 21. I have the LA Chargers. A lot has to do with Herbert. Like, what's going to go on with him? That high ankle sprain probably playing a little bit of an impact. They were up 10-0 on the Chiefs. End up losing 17-10. Not exactly what you want to do. They've just not been able to compete with the Chiefs, especially at home, which was somewhat interesting stat to see for the Chargers. Falling here, they end up having a bye week next week, which is going to be much needed. They need to get Herbert back, because if they're going to be in a competitive state in this, maybe not the division, but in the wild card area of the AFC. They need to start picking up some wins. This rest maybe comes at a perfect time for them. They're right there in the thick of it with the rest of the AFC West. It's hard for me to decipher right now. It's going to come down to a lot of these matchups when they start playing each other. Number 20, I have the Arizona Cardinals. I had them slotted as the game of the week last week, and they fell kind of short in that department, giving up 42 points to Washington and only putting up 14 of their own. It was relatively close for the first quarter, but then Washington really started pulling away. Offensively, it seems like it was there, but it was really shut down. Maybe it's a story of Washington really is that good, and we'll see that as it goes on further this season. We're going to see if maybe Arizona isn't quite the team we saw first couple of weeks. They are going on the road to San Francisco, the division rival, the team that is expected to win this division, and it's going to be interesting because divisions always play tough, of course, against each other, but what kind of Arizona team? Are they going to be much better than last year? Are they going to be a little bit better than last year? Are we back to being the bottom feeder of this division? I have them ahead of the Rams right now, but if the Rams get healthy and start playing well, I do think that changes. Number 19, moving up a few spots here. A little bit of credit. They did pick up a 10-point win over the Carolina Panthers, picking up their first win of the season. Building off that, they did have a pretty good game against the Chiefs not too long ago as well. So maybe Cincinnati, they just can't figure out the first bit of the season. If they can start figuring that out, I think it's going to be much better for this team in the longevity. Problem I'm having with the Bengals, they have Baltimore this week, a team that has looked potentially best in the NFL at times, and at times a little iffy, but they are in a kind of must-win situation if they want to see themselves winning this division. If they drop to 1-4, and on the other side of it, we've got a Steelers team who's 3-1. We got a Baltimore team who's looked very good, not necessarily picking up the wins. Bengals have their backs against the wall. It's really time. They need to pick up a win, and a big win's going to have to come this week. Number 18, I like the grind. I like the win they picked up against the Steelers this week. It really demonstrated a team that I thought we would see the first couple of weeks. It just wasn't there. I don't know if Anthony Richardson going down early in that game made the difference, if that's really what got, but Joe Flacco comes in there and led this team to victory. It's going to be interesting if Richardson doesn't play this week. Will there be a quarterback controversy if Flacco comes out and delivers another win? On the road at Jacksonville, a team that has suffered. It's time for Indy to build it. They're going to be able to keep pace with the Houston Texans if they pick up a big W, and it's very possible. Number 17, dropping a little bit down this board, and arguably I could see people in the comments saying, might have them too high, because right now they haven't demonstrated much of anything. Rodgers, at times, they pick up wins. They barely squeaked out the win against Tennessee. They lose to Denver this week 10-9, just in an ugly, ugly game. But you got to assume that it's going to start coming around. They do have the defense. The defense continues to show up year after year right now, and even this year it is showing up and shutting teams down. So I think they're still on their pace. They're probably slightly better than 500 as a team, but kind of slates them in the middle. Right now they're on the lower half of the league, which says something. They just have to bounce back, and they have their hands full. They're going on the road against the undefeated Minnesota Vikings. I don't know. I don't like it for the Jets right now. Dallas up next, number 16. Not really looking super good. They did have that win Thursday night, 20-15, but overall, there are a lot of issues that just seem to be happening. The offense isn't pouring on like they were. They managed to stop the run very well against the Giants, which going into this week, I think probably was their number one focus. The problem I'm having is this division seems to be getting stronger and stronger comparatively to the years before, whereas they don't seem to be looking like much better than they did last year, and if not, they might have taken a step back. So there is some concerns with Dallas. How they bounce back this week is going to be big. On the road, Sunday nighter against the Pittsburgh Steelers, a team that has performed super well. We want to see if Dallas is for real. This is going to be a must-win situation, in my opinion, for Dallas Cowboys. It's going to start hitting panic mode. And number 15, I have that exact team, the Pittsburgh Steelers. I took some heat last week because I had them somewhat low. I think 12th, and they were 3-0, but guys, they hadn't really been tested too much yet this year. They lose to Indy in a game where at the time I had them in the bottom two rows. I still moved them up. Still technically have the Steelers ahead. I do think had that game had a fifth quarter, the Steelers would have slowly came back and won that game. Just kind of got away from them relatively early, 17-0 deficit, sometimes hard to come back from. I do like how they bounced back and started to make a game of it, so I do give credit for the Steelers, but at the same time, I think they're on pace for a 9-8, maybe 10-7 kind of season, which not necessarily is going to be good enough to be a playoff. I haven't really run the numbers, but that's borderline playoff team, and as you can see, borderline playoff team in the rankings. Number 14, I have the 3-1 Houston Texans, and while they continue to pick up wins, they haven't super impressed me yet. Mixon still remains out, and I think he's going to be out for this week at least. But the come from behind victory over Jacksonville kind of cemented that 3-1 lead, but they just have not impressed. They haven't had blowout wins. They had a squeak win against Chicago, they had a squeak win against Indy, and then they got blown out by the Minnesota Vikings. So right now they're kind of sitting there on the fence. It could have easily been a 1-3 start for this Houston Texans. Lucky for them, 2-0 so far against their own division, really setting it up. Real test this week, gonna kind of see if they are ready to kind of show where they belong, and they're playing Buffalo this week, a team coming off a big loss that they're going to want to fight back on. And so Houston is at home in that boat. Next up, Green Bay Packers, number 13 on the board. Another one of those teams that just had a really, really rough start. I think they were down, might have been 20-0, but it was definitely 17-0. Jordan Love making his return after missing the past 2 weeks, throwing a few picks. And it was a pretty ugly start for the Green Bay Packers. They managed to pull this game within 6 by when all is said and done, or was it 2? Within 2 when all is said and done, 31-29. And had they not missed a couple of field goals, this game was theirs, but it just didn't happen. So we can only count the games that they actually win, and right now Green Bay is there. I think they bounce back from this. They're playing the Rams, a good spot to bounce back, a team that has been kind of slow, and I kind of expect them to do that. But I did pull them down because a little bit concerning about the way Jordan Love started that game, but we'll see how it's all about how you finish. Number 12, I have the Philadelphia Eagles, and they lose this past week 33-16 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the team that knocked them out of the playoffs as well last year. And the thing that's really holding back, of course, wide receivers. A.J. Brown out. Devontae Smith out. It's just hurting them, and I don't really know how to gauge this team right now. I could, in theory, if I'm matching them up against these teams below them right now, if they pull out the same roster they did last week, they're probably going to lose a few of these games. But overall, I think once these guys get back, they're going to be all right. They're going to sort it out. They're in a tough spot because they can't keep piling up these losses. Lucky for them, they did win the first couple of games against some teams that might come up down to some tie-break situations come playoff team time. Green Bay, Atlanta come to mind in those two situations. But yeah, number 12. Number 11, team probably climbing the board the most here, right? And it's just all on the back of Williams, the quarterback, just playing absolutely lights out. 42-14 over Arizona. It's back-to-back games now. They just put up massive numbers on offense. Their defense has been holding its own for the most part. A lot of these guys having an opportunity to really demonstrate that they're a big part of a team that has had a losing mentality, at least for the last little while, right? And this might be the best team we've seen out of Washington in quite some time. I know there's a lot of hype probably coming out of there. Playing at home this week, they're going to probably have some big fan base behind them against a struggling Cleveland team. They might be able to just keep building on this, while the other teams in their division, mainly the Cowboys and the Eagles, not exactly performing the way you would expect them to as of yet. And it's time to build it. They haven't yet played those guys, but we'll see. Number 10. Those Buccaneers I talked about, 3-1 now. After a pretty embarrassing loss the week before, they bounced back big with a win over Philly. And they're going to be playing this tomorrow against Atlanta. Right now, the NFC South is shaping up to be super tight. And I'm just going to do it now just because it's interesting. Number 9, I'm going to put up New Orleans. And number 8, I'm going to put up Atlanta. I'm just going to talk about all these teams relatively at the same time. They're playing Atlanta. It's really tight right now. All these teams are shaping up to really be playoff caliber teams, and it's really hard not to talk about it. Tampa Bay playing Atlanta, New Orleans just played Atlanta. It came down to a field goal in the last minute when Atlanta won that game by 2. And New Orleans has looked great, but now they've dropped 2 in a row. And at the same time, I'm not going to hold too much against them. They dropped it to the Eagles. They dropped it to Atlanta. And they looked really good in the other 2 games. They had Taysom Hill come back this week, and he managed to slot back into that offense. But falling short on Atlanta kind of sucks. New Orleans plays Kansas City on the road for Monday night, so it's probably going to knock them back a peg. Well, if these other teams start to impress, we'll see how New Orleans matches up against the Super Bowl champs, Kansas City. Atlanta, just talked about it. They're playing Tampa tomorrow. It's going to be awesome. They matched up well against New Orleans. This division is just super fun, and every time these guys play, it's going to be fun to watch. That's why I threw them all up there at once. Number 7, I have the Seattle Seahawks. After going 3-0, a lot of hype was there. It was looking super interesting in how they were going to match up against Detroit on the Monday night. They kind of got blown out, even though the final score was 42-29. They never really pulled it within one score. It was almost always a 2-score game the whole way. Their defense kind of got lit up by Detroit. Can you blame them? Not too much, right? Seattle going to be hosting Giants, who had an extra long break, where Seattle technically has a little bit of a shorter break. We're playing on the Monday night. That'll be a fun one to watch. How they rebound is going to be super important. Number 6, dropping a few spots, and I think the defense kind of got exposed a little bit for the Buffalo Bills this past week. Can you blame them? Baltimore has offensive weapons. Derrick Henry absolutely is a beast right now. He is on pace for some massive yards, lead the league, I'm sure, by when all is said and done. Bills just could not get anything going. 35-10 lost to the Baltimore Ravens. A team that, for the most part, they've been back and forth, and they had some major comebacks before, and Baltimore had times where they left the door open, and Bills just could not get anything going. They are at Houston this week. A tough matchup to follow that one up with, and a team that is hungry to get some revenge on them from last year and the years before. Next up, number 5, making a little bit of a bounce back this week. I think we're starting to see San Francisco be like, okay, it's time to put the pedal to the metal. Sure, they're playing New England, 30-13, not a big deal. But this week, they're going to be hosting Arizona, and if they can just keep doing that, when we start getting McCaffrey back, when this team starts getting rolling again, it's a little bit maybe of a Super Bowl hangover or something like that. But I expect San Francisco to sort it out, and so far it looks like they might. Number 4, moving up a few spots, even though their record-wise isn't the best on this board, they just look good. Had they not lost that game to the Raiders that collapsed, I think we'd be talking about a whole different team. Starting the year off with Kansas City, not going to be easy. Kind of throw that one away. The Raiders lost. Okay, it happens. Don't really count on it. But the Bills game really demonstrated what this team is capable of, and I think that is more of what to expect of this team as they start figuring out some of these new players, how they fit into this overall offense. Ravens, going to be fun. They're playing Cincinnati on the road. These guys hate each other. How they match up, going to be interesting. Baltimore probably wants to lay the smack down. Number 3, we have the Detroit Lions. They have just dominated, other than the one loss to the Tampa Bay. 42-29 over Seattle. They have a bye this week. Not a whole lot going on. They're going to sit there and hope that Minnesota loses so that they can make up some ground. But they're really getting ready to play. The division games are going to be what matters in this NFC North, especially because number 2, the Minnesota Vikings, continue to just absolutely shock me, at least. And maybe other people out there aren't as shocked as me, but I am absolutely shocked with how they've played so far. 4-0, 31-29 over the division rivals. They now go and host the Jets, a team that is not going to be ready for them, I don't think. So that'll be fun to watch. Can they keep it going? 5-0. The other team up top, still undefeated, ex-Super Bowl champs. Can't drop them at number 1 if you're the ex-Super Bowl champs and you still win and haven't lost yet this season. 17-10 over the Chargers. They managed to just squeak out a win again. Every game has not been super impressive for them, but they're managing to win. That seems to be the Kansas City way, the Andy Reid way. They find a way to win. Monday Night Football versus New Orleans, another tough opponent. Going to be fun. Always watching them on prime time. When you're the better teams, you get more prime time. It just seems to be how it is. There you guys have it. 32 teams in the books. Let me know what you guys think. What would you change? Where am I completely out to lunch, etc., etc. And I appreciate anyone smashes that like button, subscribes to the channel. We will be doing these all season long. plus other fun videos along the way. So thanks for watching. We will see you for that next video.